I've run this old apartment in the city for ages, seeing all sorts of characters come and go. But when Karen, the redhead with a flair for the dramatic, moved in, man, things got wild. Here's how it all went down. I'm Greg, the proud owner of an apartment. This quaint, albeit slightly time-worn property has been a family jewel for many generations. Sitting gracefully in the city's pulsating heart, its aging walls have played silent witness to countless historical moments. From wartime farewells to the jubilant sounds of New Year's celebrations, the echoes of yesteryears still linger in its corridors. For me, overseeing this apartment isn't just a matter of business. It's an homage to my ancestors and a commitment to preserving a rich legacy. As time has meandered by, my bond with the building has only grown. I've traced the contours of every brick during its numerous repair sessions, winced at the familiar creaks of the old wooden floorboards during quiet nights, and have come to treasure the stories each corner conceals. But it's not just the building itself. It's the people within that breathe life into this place. I've been blessed to play host to a myriad of souls over the years. From vivacious families taking their first steps into parenthood, eager college students with dreams bigger than their backpacks, to the endearing elderly duos whose love stories could rival any classic romance novel, I've seen them all. And with each passing tenant, the tapestry of this apartment's history becomes richer. To strengthen our bonds, I initiated monthly gatherings in the courtyard. Evenings filled with laughter, shared stories, and the tantalizing aroma of shared dishes. Yet, as is the nature of life, change is its only constant. The rhythm of my apartment experienced a noticeable shift with the arrival of Karen in apartment 5B. From the start, Karen stood out, with fiery red hair, a penchant for dramatics, and a wardrobe primarily consisting of designer labels. She was hard to miss. On her moving day, I'd offered a hand. "Thanks, but I've got it," she'd said with a toss of her hair. A few weeks into her stay, I was watering the potted plants in the hallway when she approached. "Greg, your plants are lovely, but they'd be better in my apartment," she half-joked. "You can always get some for yourself, Karen," I replied playfully. During one of our monthly gatherings, she sidled up to me. "Greg, between us, the rent's a bit steep." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Well, you knew the cost when you moved in." She laughed, her eyes darting around. "Just an observation. Maybe we could work something out?" I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a passing comment. But soon, her remarks became a recurrent theme. One sunny morning, just as I was flipping through bills and flyers, I noticed Karen walking towards me, envelope in hand. There was an undeniable tension in her stride, and the deep furrows on her brow spoke of concerns that went beyond daily trivialities. As she got closer, I could see her eyes darting around, as if searching for the right words. Finally, with a sigh, she spoke up, her voice quivering just a tad. "Greg," she began, pausing momentarily as if gathering her thoughts, "I'm in a bit of a bind. I'm short on rent this month. I hate to ask, but could you possibly give me an extension?" Caught slightly off guard, I studied her for a moment. The worry in her eyes felt genuine, and everyone goes through tough times. Feeling a surge of compassion, I nodded slowly. "All right, Karen," I replied, trying to sound firm yet understanding. "I'll give you another week, but remember, this is an exception. You need to ensure it doesn't become a recurring pattern." She nodded gratefully, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, Greg. I promise I'll sort this out." But as days turned into weeks, Karen's promise seemed increasingly empty. The rent was nowhere in sight, and, adding fuel to the fire, rumors began to swirl around the apartment. Hushed conversations, usually reserved for idle gossip about weather or television dramas, took a different tone. The palpable tension in the apartment was undeniable. Every glance from a tenant, every hushed conversation, seemed to be laden with judgment and unspoken questions. As the owner of this establishment, my primary intention was always to create an atmosphere of trust and community, and it pained me to realize that my act of leniency towards Karen had been misconstrued and was now fanning the flames of gossip. This unexpected turn of events was already unsettling, but the envelope I held in my hands threatened to turn my world upside down. The seal, formal and intimidating, hinted at the serious content inside. With a feeling of trepidation, I delicately opened the envelope and began reading. The letter, penned in Karen's elegant but cold handwriting, sent shivers down my spine. Line after line, she wove a tale that portrayed me not as the benevolent landlord I was, but as a predator who had continuously invaded her personal space. Each accusation felt like a slap in the face, every insinuation a twisting of the knife. The audacity of her claims was astounding. To suggest that her delay in paying rent, a matter of pure financial transaction, was somehow tied to some covert special arrangement between us was beyond belief. It was a clear attempt to deflect attention from her own shortcomings and responsibilities. The weight of the letter, both metaphorical and literal, pressed down on me. I felt cornered, trapped in a narrative I had no part in creating. But with the whispers already circling the community and the evidence of Karen's calculated move in my hands, I knew I had to act swiftly and decisively to both clear my name and restore the sense of trust in apartment. A cold chill ran down my spine. The walls of my office seemed to close in on me, and the room began to spin. The gravity of the allegations, the potential tarnishing of my reputation, and the sheer audacity of the false claims made my heart race. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I slammed the letter down, its echo resonating my shock and indignation. "This is preposterous!" I found myself shouting into the empty room, the weight of injustice heavy on my shoulders. The betrayal from someone I had tried to accommodate and the looming implications of her claims made the situation all the more unfathomable. Armed with months of correspondence, emails discussing lease agreements, text messages about plumbing issues, and receipts of past rent payments, I decided to clear my name. I called for a tenants meeting, a platform to address the issue head-on. Facing an audience of curious and concerned residents, Karen's confident facade wavered. When presented with the evidence, her story unraveled. She finally admitted, "I just thought it would buy me more time to pay the rent." The aftermath was swift. While I had every right to evict her, I instead gave her a month's notice to find a new place, to give her a chance at a fresh start elsewhere. The gravity of Karen's wild accusations would have been laughable had they not threatened my reputation in such a dramatic, almost soap opera-esque fashion. I mean, really? Harassment over a clogged toilet? It felt like I had been unwillingly thrust into an episode of Desperate Tenants. Now, while I'm a landlord, not a lawyer, even I knew the tables could be turned here. False accusations could not only ruin my spotless reputation, but could send someone down a slippery legal slide straight into defamation dungeon, a place no one wants to be, not even in the most absurd of board games. To combat this audacious farce, I dived headfirst into my archive of communications, which, to be honest, felt more like a dramatic treasure hunt at that moment. Each email I found was like unearthing a golden relic. Every text about plumbing issues a gleaming jewel. I even had the ultimate weapon, a glittering sword of past rent receipts. The tenant meeting? Oh, it was no ordinary gathering. It felt more like a courtroom drama mixed with a reality TV show finale. There were gasps, whispers, and I swear I saw someone selling popcorn at the back. As I showcased my treasure trove of evidence with all the flair of a game show host, the crowd was on the edge of their seats. Karen, realizing her tale was as flimsy as a house of cards in a tornado, finally wilted. "I just wanted more time to pay the rent," she whimpered, probably expecting dramatic violin music to start playing. Oh wow, what a wild ride that was. Apartment drama at its finest. I've heard of nightmare tenants, but Karen takes the cake. Props to Greg for handling it with grace and not losing his cool. Growing up, the shadow of my father's broken promises loomed large, casting a cold darkness over every milestone. But nothing prepared me for the agony of his absence on the most significant day of my life, my wedding day. Here's how it all went down. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the city. I sat on the balcony of my apartment, staring at the wedding invitation that lay in front of me. The date was circled in red, a constant reminder of the promise my father had made to me, a promise that was now broken. Growing up, my father was always the distant figure in my life. His music career had taken him to places I could only dream of, but it also meant that he missed out on most of my milestones. I remember the countless times I'd excitedly tell my friends, "My dad's coming to my school play," only to be met with disappointment when he canceled last minute. The apologies that followed were always sincere, but the hurt never truly went away. The memory was a relentless specter, forever haunting the corridors of my mind. My high school graduation, a day that should have been a beacon of pride, was marred by a gaping void. As I took those monumental steps onto the stage, my heart raced, and my eyes darted desperately across the crowd, searching for the one face that mattered most. "Where is he?" I whispered to myself, the weight of his absence pressing down on me. Later, in a move that felt like a cruel jest, he presented me with a video he had filmed on that very day. I stared at the screen, disbelief and anger warring within me. "You missed my graduation for this asterisk!" I spat, my voice trembling with fury. "It was important, darling," he replied defensively, not meeting my gaze. "More important than your own daughter's milestone?" I shot back, tears of rage and hurt blurring my vision. Time had a way of dulling pain, but the scars remained. I had resigned myself to the fact that I would always be a mere footnote in the grand narrative of my father's life. But when he promised, with a sincerity that seemed genuine, to attend my wedding, a fragile hope blossomed within me. That hope was brutally crushed with a single phone call. "I'm so sorry, darling," he began, his voice dripping with rehearsed regret. "I've scheduled a concert on your wedding day. You're doing this asterisk again, asterisk? I cried out, the raw pain evident in my voice. After all these years, after all the promises. I thought you'd understand, he replied weakly. I'll send a gift, something special. A gift? I scoffed bitterly. You think a gift can replace your presence on the most important day of my life? Listen, No, I interrupted, my voice cold and resolute. It's either the concert or me. Make your choice. What followed was a heated argument, the intensity of which we had never experienced before. You're being selfish, he yelled, his voice echoing through the phone. You expect me to change my entire schedule for you? The irony of his words was not lost on me, considering the countless times he had expected the same from me. The support from my family was overwhelming. Most of them sided with me, understanding the pain I felt. But my sister, always the daddy's girl, took his side. You're overreacting, she told me, her words dripping with disdain. As the days went by, the weight of my decision weighed heavily on my shoulders. I loved my father, and the thought of cutting ties with him was heartbreaking, but I was tired. Tired of always being second best, tired of the empty promises. Sitting on the balcony, the wedding invitation in front of me, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Was I being too harsh? Was I letting my emotions cloud my judgment? The internal battle raged on, but one thing was clear. I needed my father to understand the depth of my pain. Whether that meant cutting ties or finding a way to mend our relationship, only time would tell. Growing up, my father was always a constant presence in my life, but not in the way one would expect. Despite the divorce, he was always there, supporting us financially. But emotionally, that was a different story. In his eyes, he was the perfect father, providing for us and ensuring we had everything we needed. But the emotional distance was palpable. Every missed milestone, every ignored achievement, was a stark reminder of the gap that existed between us. The wedding was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be the one day he prioritized me over everything else. But when he called to inform me he had scheduled a concert on the same day, my heart shattered. It was a painful realization that in his eyes I would always come second. Our phone call a few days ago had been tumultuous, to say the least. I had poured my heart out, expressing years of pent-up frustration and hurt, but all I received in return were accusations and dismissals. It was a pattern that had repeated itself countless times over the years, and I was tired of it. The text I sent him was my final attempt at reaching out, a desperate plea for understanding and acknowledgement. But deep down, I knew it was wishful thinking. The chances of him truly understanding my pain were slim. As I stood in front of the mirror, my thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. My fiancé entered, his eyes filled with love and concern. Hey, he whispered, wrapping his arms around me. I know it's hard, but today is about us. Let's focus on the love we share and the life we're building together. His words were a balm to my wounded soul, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. He was right. Today was about us, and nothing else mattered. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. As I walked down the aisle, surrounded by loved ones, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. My father's absence was a void, but it was filled with the love and support of those who truly cared about me. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and joy. My friends and family rallied around me, ensuring I had the time of my life. And as the night drew to a close, I realized something important. While my father's love might be conditional, the love I shared with my husband and the support I received from my loved ones was unconditional. Life is full of ups and downs, and while my relationship with my father might never be perfect, I had found a love that was pure and unwavering, and that was all that mattered. The wedding was a whirlwind of emotions. The laughter, the joy, the tears, and the love that filled the room were palpable. Every moment was a testament to the love and support I had from my friends, my mom, and my incredible maid of honor. Their efforts to make the day special for me were evident in every detail. But amidst the celebration, there was a void, the absence of my father. The days that followed were filled with reflection. Conversations with my paternal family, all of whom stood by me, gave me clarity. While cutting ties completely seemed drastic, I knew I couldn't continue with the status quo. The emotional toll of constantly seeking validation and acknowledgement from my father was draining. I decided on a middle ground, limited contact, a decision that would allow me to protect my emotional well-being while still maintaining a semblance of a relationship. The shrill ring of the phone pierced the silence of the room. Taking a deep breath, I answered, already knowing who was on the other end. Dad, I began, my voice heavy with emotion. We need to talk. His voice, usually so confident, wavered slightly. All right, what's on your mind? The dam broke, and years of suppressed emotions came pouring out. Do you even remember the projects I told you about in college? The ones I was so passionate about? I asked, my voice trembling. There was a pause, then a hesitant, I think so? Tears threatened to spill. That's just it, Dad. You never truly listened. Every achievement, every milestone, you were absent. And the one day I needed you the most, my wedding day, you chose a concert over me. He tried to interject. I've always been proud of you. I've always told you that. No, I snapped. You were proud of the idea of me, the version that fit into your world. But you never took the time to know the real me. You missed my wedding, Dad, the most important day of my life. His voice grew defensive. I've done everything for you. I've provided. I've been there. Being there physically isn't the same as being present, Dad, I retorted, my voice choked with emotion. You've always seen me through your lens, never truly understanding or valuing my perspective. The line went silent. The weight of our words, the depth of our emotions, hung heavily between us. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that was both painful and cathartic. Days later, my cousin shared a conversation she had overheard between my father and my aunt. The realization that others recognized the chasm between my father and me was bittersweet. It was a validation of my feelings, yet a stark reminder of the fractured relationship we shared. The decision to cut ties had been heart-wrenching, but it was a step I had to take for my own peace and well-being. My relationship with my sister began to mend. We found common ground, understanding, and support in each other. While the journey ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. I was surrounded by love, and that love would see me through the toughest of times. As the days turned into weeks, I found solace in the love of my husband, the support of my friends, and the unwavering strength of my mother. The pain of my father's absence would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had found my voice, my worth, and my path forward, and I was determined to walk it with grace, dignity, and love. The wedding venue was adorned with flowers, fairy lights, and the soft hum of anticipation. Guests took their seats, their eyes fixed on the entrance, waiting for the bride to make her appearance. As the first notes of Metallica's Nothing Else Matters played, I took a deep breath and began my walk down the aisle. The decision to walk alone had been a difficult one. My stepfather, always the pillar of support, had reminded me of my earlier resolve to do things my way. And as I walked, the weight of my father's absence pressed down on me. But halfway through, a tiny hand reached out and grabbed mine. My goddaughter, with her innocent eyes and infectious smile, became my unexpected companion. Together, we walked towards the new chapter of my life. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, one that I would cherish forever. Amidst the celebrations, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. I glanced at it briefly, then set it aside. Today was not the day for old wounds. Today was a day for love, laughter, and new beginnings. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. The joy of the wedding, the bliss of the honeymoon, and the shadow of my strained relationship with my father. It was a delicate balance, one that I was still learning to navigate. The messages from well-wishers and curious onlookers poured in. Some were kind, others speculative. But I held my ground, choosing to protect my privacy and the sanctity of my family. My father, despite everything, was still a part of me. And while our relationship was fractured, my love for him remained. Life is a symphony of moments, some joyous, others painful. But each moment shapes us, molds us, and teaches us. And as I looked back at the journey that had brought me to this point, I realized that every tear, every heartbreak, and every joyous moment had led me to where I was today. And for that, I was grateful. To all those who had been a part of my journey, who had offered words of comfort, advice, and support, I was eternally thankful. Life would go on, with its ups and downs, but I was ready to face it head-on, with love, grace, and resilience. Family ties, while important, shouldn't be chains that bind us to continuous pain and suffering. Everyone deserves peace and happiness in their lives. If a family member consistently brings negativity, heartache, and misery, it's essential to prioritize one's mental and emotional well-being. Sometimes, creating distance or cutting ties, as difficult as it may be, is the healthiest choice for personal growth and overall well-being. During a serene beach trip meant for relaxation and bonding, our group of 5 friends, 2 couples and an additional female, decided to mix alcohol and acid for the first time, believing it would enhance the experience. As the night's events unfolded, a haunting blend of darkness, intoxication, and mistaken identities culminated in a shocking betrayal and a desperate search for truth. Here's how it all went down. My partner, 24 years old male, and I, 22 years old female, embarked on a beach trip with friends to experience acid for the first time. Our group of 5 included 2 males and 3 females, with 2 couples and an additional female. "We should take the acid now so it kicks in by evening," one friend suggested. We all agreed, and as we waited for its effects, we relaxed by our tents, sipping beer and enjoying a campfire. As the acid's effects began, we also felt the alcohol's influence. "I can't drink much more," I confessed, being a lightweight. My partner laughed. "Well, more for me then." The initial sensations were enjoyable. The sand felt like grass, and I exclaimed, "Does anyone else hear Billie Eilish, or is it just the wind?" However, the atmosphere shifted hours later. "I need some fresh air," I said, deciding to take a walk with two friends. My partner, looking a bit pale, murmured, "I'll stay here, not feeling great." Our other male friend said, "Hey, can you stay with him?" pointing to his girlfriend, "just to make sure he's okay." Our return was met with unsettling sounds from my partner's tent. "Do you hear that? It sounds off," one friend whispered with a concerned look. As we cautiously approached and pulled back the tent flap, the sight before us was shocking. My partner and our friend's girlfriend, entangled. "How could you? Right in front of me?" I screamed, my voice shaking with disbelief and anger. Overwhelmed, my vision blurred, and I collapsed. When I regained consciousness, I was back in my tent. My partner's voice, thick with emotion, broke the silence. "It was the acid, the alcohol. I genuinely believed she was you. I can't even explain how sorry I am." By morning, the atmosphere was tense. Our friend's girlfriend had vanished, leaving an awkward silence among the remaining four of us. My partner, desperate to make me understand, pleaded, "She had your scent, your hair. In that state, I couldn't tell the difference. But I know that's no excuse." Days passed, and the weight of his betrayal bore down on me. I sought refuge at my sister's place, trying to process everything. My phone was a constant reminder of him, buzzing with his desperate messages. "I messed up, I know, but I love you. Can we please talk?" The pain of his betrayal gnawed at me, leaving me torn between the memories of our past and the uncertainty of our future. For a month, he had been meticulously planning a proposal. He even went the extra mile, custom designing an engagement ring that perfectly matched my tastes. However, after a grave error on his part, I told him to put any thoughts of proposing out of his mind. To shed light on the situation, one night, he explained that the tent was so enveloped in darkness that he could hardly discern anything, with the campfire behind the tent being the sole source of illumination. While his account about the dimness was accurate, how could he overlook the evident differences? The woman's voice was notably deeper than mine, and her scent was distinct, given our choice of different perfumes. Moreover, her hair was a natural blonde, contrasting starkly with my freshly dyed ginger locks. His revelation about the impending proposal has only intensified my inner turmoil. The thought of ending things with him, especially knowing his intentions, fills me with guilt, even if I recognize that my feelings are valid. He knows full well that I've been anticipating his proposal for over a year. So much has happened. Our friend was able to get in touch with the girl who was caught with my partner because he went to the girl's house and no one ended up being there. My partner called off work to come to me so that we could sit down and talk about it once and for all. My partner's eyes met mine, filled with a mix of regret and confusion. "I had to come see you," he said. "I left work early because I knew we needed to talk." "You're right. I wouldn't have been able to sleep either." I nodded, urging him to continue. "Tell me everything." He hesitated for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "When I was in the tent, it was all so surreal. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or awake. My eyes felt open, but everything was just blurred. I felt dizzy, hyper, and exhausted all at once. It made me feel sick, but not enough to throw up. I just needed to lie down." I listened intently, trying to piece together the events of that night. He continued, "I heard the tent unzip, and I just assumed it was you. So, when I asked, 'Are you going to bed?' and she just collapsed next to me, I didn't think much of it. I can't remember if she replied, but then I felt a kiss on my arm." He paused, swallowing hard. "I thought it was you, so I pulled her close, trying to say goodnight, but then she kissed me on the lips." She kissed him back, and their interaction continued from that point. He indicated his agreement through his physical response, not due to any hallucinations, but because of his inability to see. He kept his eyes closed for most of the time as he couldn't perceive anything visually. Subsequently, they undressed, and she positioned herself on top of him. They engaged in intimate physical contact without engaging in sexual intercourse. He mentioned that he couldn't sense much, as if there was minimal physical contact during their interaction. The tents flung open suddenly, and his initial assumption was that it was her securing them. However, the reality was quite different. It was us. The sight left him thoroughly bewildered. He muttered to himself, "Wait, what's going on? Is that really you guys?" Puzzlement lingered in his expression as he grappled with this unexpected revelation. Doubt crept in, causing a delay in his reaction. It was as if he questioned the very fabric of reality, unable to reconcile how he could see me outside the tent when he firmly believed I was right beside him. The situation escalated as shouts pierced the night and the girl hastily distanced herself. With a sense of urgency, he stepped out of the tent, completely oblivious to his own state of undress. His mind was preoccupied with the task of deciphering the chaos unfolding around him. Amid the tumult, he suddenly became aware of my deteriorating condition. First sickness, then a fainting spell. Meanwhile, our concerned friend's voice grew louder, berating him for the chaotic turn of events. "Friend, what the hell were you thinking? Carrying me back into the tent, he gently placed me on the ground and simply gazed at me, a mixture of shock and confusion in his eyes as he attempted to process the tumultuous events that had just transpired. His eyes darted to our friend, his voice shaking with rage. "Is this some sick joke?" he demanded. But as he scanned the room, the reality of the situation dawned on him. "Oh God, it's true," he whispered, his voice breaking. Panic and regret washed over him, and tears streamed down his face. I thought it was you," he choked out. Suddenly, the room's attention shifted. The girl was nowhere to be found. "Where is she?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the tense silence. "What the hell was she doing? Why didn't she say anything?" He turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "She never spoke, only moaned. I thought it was you. Our hair, the brief flashes of her eyes in the dim light. I thought they were yours." I stepped forward, pulling him into an embrace. Tears flowed freely from both of us, our hearts heavy with pain and confusion. The weight of the moment was suffocating. I asked him if he needed help reporting this girl to the police. His gaze was fixed on the ground, deep in thought. "I don't want to go to the police," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I really believe she mistook me for her boyfriend." I felt a surge of disbelief. "But she saw her boyfriend with me, right there on the shore. There's no way she could have mistaken you for him." He looked up, his eyes filled with confusion and pain. "I know it sounds crazy, but in that moment, everything felt so normal. I genuinely believed it was you. It was only afterwards that the reality of the situation hit me, and it was jarring." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I understand this is difficult, but you need to consider the implications. It's horrifying to think that someone we trust could violate us in this way, but it's essential to confront it." He nodded slowly, taking in my words. "I'll think about it." We sat in silence, the weight of the conversation pressing down on us. After a while, we began reminiscing about the happier moments of the night, trying to find some solace in the memories. We were both relieved that we talked about it, and it genuinely felt like he was telling the truth. I've known the man for 5 years. He simply cannot lie. He said he understands why I thought he cheated because he also feels he made a mistake. He mentioned the proposal because he was afraid of losing me, but acknowledged the poor timing of it. I expressed my own guilt and apologized for leaving him in that situation, for letting it escalate, for everything. Now he's taking a shower and will head back to work afterward, and I'm quite emotional as I write this. As for the girl, brace yourself. We finally heard from her through our male friend, and it turns out she had been missing because she was in the hospital. Her phone was confiscated by her mother. Our friend, tired of waiting for a response, went to the girl's house only to find it empty. He then obtained the mother's number from a neighbor they were close to and managed to speak with the girl. Strange, isn't it? Her own mother told our friend she was home safe, but she had been in the hospital all along. She explained that she left the scene because of the guilt she felt upon realizing her mistake. She mentioned that she mistook our tent for hers, since they were all the same color. When she heard my partner speak, she misinterpreted his words and thought she recognized her boyfriend's voice, leading to the confusion. She initiated small kisses, and when he responded, she felt reassured that it was her boyfriend, forgetting completely that he was only 20 footsteps away. I had also forgotten that she was tasked with keeping an eye on my partner in case of any issues. When she eventually realized her mistake, she quietly left without a word and took an Uber home. Tragically, she misjudged the situation and jumped out of the moving car, believing it wasn't in motion because she was already home. This resulted in her fracturing her arm and a prolonged stay in the hospital, where she experienced self-harm ideation and infections. Furthermore, it appears she may face legal consequences and fines for endangering herself and others while under the influence of acid. She expressed acceptance of whatever consequences may come her way, whether it involves us reporting the incident or any other actions we might take. A friend who spoke to her mentioned that she sounded genuinely remorseful and concerned for all of us, especially my partner and me. She even admitted to feeling like she may have initiated non-consensual activity and is awaiting further details from my partner about the incident. He is currently on his way to visit her, but many aspects of the situation remain unclear and troubling to us. Needless to say, I am both relieved and horrified to have heard both parties' perspectives. This has been such an exhausting day. It doesn't feel real. We will continue to work on this and may probably need therapy. The situation ended up being much bigger than just me, and I feel that the blame falls squarely on us. We allowed this situation to happen, and it doesn't matter whether it was intentional or not. We were irresponsible and made a really foolish decision. We thought going to the beach was a great idea for solitude, silence, and the view, but we didn't consider the darkness and the potential consequences of drinking and taking acid at the same time. Honestly, it was a precarious situation from the start. We even put ground rules in place, but looking back, it's clear that any of us could have ended up in a dangerous situation, like drowning, despite it being low tide that night. It was an incredibly unwise decision. Regarding our relationship, we've come to the agreement that we need some physical space right now. it feels too soon to share the same bed, so we've decided to seek therapy together to work through this. We plan to have a more in-depth conversation after he finishes his shower. While I'll continue to stay at my sister's place, we'll make an effort to see each other regularly to provide support during this difficult time. Both of us are still deeply affected and shaken by what happened, but we are committed to working through it together. We've had open and honest conversations, and we've decided to rebuild trust, albeit with very strict boundaries when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Personally, I don't tend to develop trust issues easily, so I'm hopeful that the healing process won't be as challenging as some people make it out to be. Mixing alcohol with psychedelics is a recipe for disaster. These substances operate on entirely different wavelengths, creating a volatile cocktail of effects when combined. Just as it's cautioned against pairing stimulants with depressants, it's equally crucial to avoid this dangerous duo. The unpredictability and intensified experiences can lead to dire consequences. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.